I'm Don Tess, better known as the Don of Beer.
And I'm M. Sauter, better known as Pints and Panels.
Welcome to the 25th episode of the All About Beer podcast. Every 2 weeks, we talk with leading experts and take a deep dive into one topic in beer. Visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And if you're feeling generous, visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer to support this show and others. On this week's episode, we'll be talking about fruit in beer. We are talking to two brewers who have built their breweries around fruit. M, what is your favorite fruit in beer?
I love raspberries. I love the way that they add tartness.
Yeah.
I go traditional when there's certain. I went to Brazil last year to judge the Brazil Beer Cup, and having cashew and some other, Brazil heavy fruit. There was a fruit that tasted like, it was just crazy. But usually when we're talking not being in Brazil, drinking Catarina sours on the beach, we're talking, I love raspberries and I love cherries, especially the way that they add the almond when they're in the pit.
The nut,
benzaldehyde. That's the flavor.
Yes. Benzaldehyde.
Yes, it's delicious. What about you, Don?
So I'm the opposite of you. I like exotic fruits.
I just said I like cashew. Come on.
That's true. But that's exactly the type of thing I get jazzed on. I'm you know me, I'm just such a nerd. So if I see a beer with something cool, then that's what I like. So, dragon fruit beers or Haskaps, that's the kind
What's
of
a
thing.
Haskap?
A Haskap is sort of blueberry-ish.
Huh.
Yeah.
When I lived in Oregon, they had Marionberry, which is
Marionberries
it's like a raspberry and a blueberry had a baby. That's really, really good. Those are excellent.
Yeah, see, I'm all over that. I like that type of thing. And like in the early days of craft beer, fruit just meant they added some syrup to typically a wheat beer, and really wasn't that exciting. But in modern fruited beers, I think there's craft brewers are doing really sophisticated, interesting things. So I'm super excited to learn how fruit is used in making flavorful and interesting beers. And we have two great guests.
Two really good guests.
Yeah. If you would like to help support the All About Beer podcast, please reach out at podcast@allaboutbeer.com.
Estrella Galicia is an independent family-owned brewery in Northwest Spain, founded in 1906. Estrella Galicia Cerveza Especial is a world-class lager brewed using the finest Spanish malts, locally cultivated Galician hops, and the best brewing practices made out of the state-of-the-art facility in A Coruña. Recognized around the world for quality and exceptional character, Estrella Galicia is a beer like no other. To learn more about Estrella Galicia, follow them at Estrella Galicia USA on Instagram.
Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.
Bret Kollmann Baker is a founder and the COO of Urban Artifact in Cincinnati, Ohio. Urban Artifact is the country's largest fruit beer-only brewery, using over 1 million pounds of fruit per year. With degrees in chemical engineering and brewing science, Bret has been able to help build out a brewery dedicated to handling massive amounts of fruit puree. In addition, Bret is the beer ambassador for Les Vergers Boiron, helping them reach more professional brewers with their fruit purees. In his free time, writing, hiking, and working on the Brew Skies podcast are his pursuits of passion. Welcome to the show, Bret.
Thanks for having me. Excited to talk to you.
We are excited to talk to you. So
yes,
the feeling is mutual. So tell us a little about Urban Artifact and how you use fruit in beer.
Well, we are a fruit-only brewery. Everything we do is made with fruit. 99% of it. And everything is also tart. We have a house lactobacillus that we use. And the reason for that being that I find that since fruit is naturally acidic, having a little bit of a tart base that we can play with and adjust the acidity levels really helps fruit beer taste more like fruit, which is the goal. So Urban Artifact, I think we are the country's largest only tart and fruit brewery, which, I mean, with all those clarifiers, it's easy to say something silly like that. But we use like 1 million pounds of fruit a year. So I mean,
Holy.
Yeah, that's what we do. We're fruit. And I guess that sums it up.
Well, when you say you use 1 million pounds of fruit, I assume that means you only use real fruit, or do you use purees from time to time? And if you are using real fruit, is there a reason?
We do use some whole fruit. We'll buy occasionally from some local suppliers when we can. Being in Ohio, we don't actually have a lot of local fruit options at the quantities that we buy from. So we work directly instead with farmers, and we buy whole fruit puree. So the only thing that's removed is the seed, unless we specifically ask to keep the seeds. Like some fruits, it actually makes a difference. Like red raspberries, we find that little bit of tannic impact and flavor you pull out of the seeds actually adds some depth, where something like bananas or strawberries, for instance. Strawberries is a good example. Strawberry seeds are actually detrimental to the flavor. So it depends, but the key is skins and all the juice and all the fiber and all the pulp, all of that's there. The seeds kind of just get in the way most of the time.
How did you learn that you want the seed in a raspberry but not in a strawberry, for example? Or experimentation, or is this known in the industry?
I don't know. There is some there's some traditional knowledge around spontaneous fruit beers coming from Belgium and other traditional practices around using whole fruit and giving the yeast and bacteria time to kind of dissolve away peach pits or cherry pits and pull out almond-like flavors and things like that. And you can pull from the cooking world a little bit, but things like strawberry seeds being bad and causing a phenolic off flavor, that was just, we learned through trial and error. And same with raspberry, is that we learned through trial and error. Like we actually got shipped raspberry that had seeds in it by accident, and we didn't really have much of a choice, so we said let's use it. And we actually really liked the flavor differences that we were pulling off of the final product. And while our customers haven't really noticed outright that we made in a change like that, all the brewers have definitely noticed a positive uptick in regards to the tannin structure and balance that it brings to the beer. And the strawberries was just years of bashing our head against the wall of, why does our strawberry beer keep tasting phenolic? Do we keep messing this up? Are we getting an infection? Are we messing up fermentation? And after figuring it out on our own, that removing the seeds and then cooking the strawberry helped, I found that by making some connections within the Smucker's organization, actually, that there is a precursor compound in strawberry seeds that lead to phenolic off flavors when exposed to the biotransformation properties of yeast.
Oh my God. You just,
Don,
my head exploded.
Yeah. Don's a real nerd, like I say in every episode. So
that is awesome.
You made his day, his year, I bet, actually.
Interview's over. Em, I hand it over to you. I'm done. I did want to ask that. So no, Em, I need you to ask a question because I need to think about this a little bit.
So I guess one of the things is, what considerations do you manage when you're using purees and whole fruit? Because there's, fruit is, has sugar in it, so it ferments. So what are you doing with that fruit when you're using it? Are you putting it in the primary, secondary? You're fermenting it out? Do you have a pasteurizer? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, good question. We everything gets added to fermentation. We usually add it about 3 to 5 days post yeast pitch. We'll add more nutrient at that time as well, and then we'll make sure to stir the tank for the next 3 days to really get as much extraction from the skins as possible for color and tannins, but also make sure all the sugars are getting fermented. That needs to be accounted for, obviously, because a lot of people might think, I've run into brewers that think you're adding fruit, so you're adding sugar and it's additive. Well, it's actually not additive. There's more water than there is sugar in fruit. So normally, unless you're making a really, really low ABV beer, your specific gravity of fruit's around 10 Plato or so, depending on the fruit. So you're actually diluting by adding fruit. So that needs to be accounted for. And the French have a fancy term for it. They call it chaptalization, but really all you're doing is just adding sugar to up the strength. We add dextrose because it ferments out dry and doesn't add much flavor impact. And then that way we can hit the same gravity that we were going for with the wort base without necessarily diluting it with the fruit. And then the other big impact for us is because we're using so much fruit, between 20 to 40% fruit in any given product, is how do you minimize loss? Because there's a huge amount of loss when you're using all that pulp and trub and stuff. So we installed a centrifuge about 3 years ago, and that has just increased our yields exponentially. It paid for itself, $175,000 machine. We saw a return on investment within 6 months. So that's been a big help.
What does your grist look like too? What are you starting with from a malt perspective? Do you have one style of beer you make and then you add different fruits, kind of like, how like lambic brewers do it? Or does each fruit beer have a different grist ratio or base that you're starting with?
So when we first started, I had these very grand ideas of we're going to match all the different malts to the different fruits, and all these nuances and complexities are going to help bring out these different flavors. And like, oh, we're doing strawberry. Well, we want to make it taste like strawberry jam. So we're going to use 100% Vienna malt base and try to bring out this toast characteristic. And it's going to be like having jam on toast. And this fruit's a little more subtle. So we're just going to use two-row. And what we found over the last 8 years is that the most important thing for us with our fruit usage and the type of fruit we're using is that year to year crop variations have way more of an impact on the final flavor than malt ever does. So we've simplified it way down, and we only use two-row, a little bit of carafoam for some foam stability, and a touch of raw barley for the same reason as well. So that's it. Almost every beer is the same kind of grist ratio, and we'll use more malt if we want a higher ABV or less in order to keep that final gravity where we want it.
You're breaking my heart now. We were friends before, but I'm a big malt
sorry.
fan.
Don, calm down.
Can you tell me a little bit about your house lacto? Is it a blend of lactose or is it a unique strain?
So when we first started, we were doing our whole niche was all things kind of wild and funky. So we did Bret beers, 100% Bret beers. We did Bret co-pitch beers. We did lacto beers. We did not sour beers. We did spontaneous beers. We did a whole bunch of stuff, and it's simplified over time. But one thing that's remained is that early on, when we were out catching local microflora samples, we caught one. Our tap room's in a church, and up in the bell tower of the church, we caught a sample that the acidity was like clean and peach-like, and we really liked it. It was sharp, it was strong, it was really great. So we sent that off to Omega Labs. They isolated that lactobacillus for us, said that it didn't match anything in their database, and now all of our beers gets this house lacto that we captured from our property, and that sours everything.
Oh, wow. Unique to Urban
That's
Artifact.
so cool.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's totally cool. I love stuff like that. Okay, we're friends again.
Good.
Right. Good
I was
job.
worried.
Good job. Yeah.
I wanted to know, given the amount of fruit that you use, is malolactic fermentation is a consideration?
We've not had an issue with that, and I'm not entirely sure if it's a combination of just the fact that we have the wort on the mixing in with it that kind of helps buffer a little bit, or if it's the specific yeasts that we're using, or if it's just the fact that it's not 100% fruit, it's up to 40% fruit, that we just don't run into that issue. But we've never really run into that as a problem.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't even really think about it.
No.
Okay, cool.
Are you using like local like is the fruit coming from, you may have already touched on this before, but like it's strawberry season right now. So are you focused on brewing with local strawberries, or is that not something that you guys think about? Is it not a seasonality thing?
We try to keep some seasonality going. We have a couple programs where we're able to use local stuff more and easier. We have our small pilot program that we do 3 to 5 beers a month on that will use whole fruit, and we'll use local and be able to do more stuff like that. And then once a week we do what we call fresh fruit tarts, but basically we buy fresh fruit, we make puree ourselves, and then we make, the smoothie style beer that we release once a week for the tap room only and have it come in and out. So we're able to pull in more of that on the small scale, but on the larger scale, it's more about finding the best growing regions for the quantities that we're buying at. I mean, we're buying, 150,000 pounds of raspberries a year, and Ohio just doesn't have the infrastructure to support that type of growth. And then also turn it into a frozen puree that ideally isn't even pasteurized. So we're just getting pureed, fruit slop shipped to us direct, where a lot of brewers are buying puree that's been made somewhere, usually turned into an aseptic via hot fill 42-pound bag in a box and then stuck in a warehouse for a long time, where everything we're buying ideally is from a farm that we like. For instance, raspberries, I've found that our favorite location is Pacific Northwest. California has okay ones. Mexican raspberries I've been pretty disappointed with. Scottish I've been pretty disappointed with. Serbian's actually been really good. But by having these farm contacts, I can get this fruit made, pureed, and then frozen immediately right next to the farm, where they don't need to pasteurize it. It doesn't ever see heat. It just literally gets pureed and frozen. So the focus for us is finding the right places for the fruit and farmers that we can work with that we know it's going to get handled and processed immediately to maintain as fresh of flavor as possible. Peaches, Turkey, for instance, weirdly enough, are some of our favorite peaches. White peaches, Spain. Blackberries, also the Pacific Northwest. Cherries, usually Michigan. Blueberries, Canada, sometimes Maine. It really just depends, but it's been a lot of fun finding what regions grow what fruits better than the other for our needs.
Do you get to travel around searching for these fruits, or do people send them to you?
Unfortunately, we don't have the budget yet to do all that traveling.
No fruit hunter.
No fruit hunter.
You mentioned that the fruit purees are frozen. Does that kill all the microbes in the fruit?
Yeah, great question. No, not really. So what we actually did is we invested in what we called the fruit cooker, and it's a giant steam jacketed kettle that's 60 barrels. We have a 30-barrel brew house, but this tank's 60 barrels. It's got 3 massive stainless steel impellers on the inside of it. And what we do is we thaw out this fruit slowly over about a week or 2 in our fridge.
Oh, wow.
And then we pump it into the fruit cooker, and we gently heat it up while we're stirring it continuously to about 145 Fahrenheit, depending on the fruit, and then pump it into our tank through our heat exchanger into the tank. And then that way, we know exactly what temperature we're bringing it to, so we can protect the flavor as much as possible rather than relying on somebody else to do that for us.
Okay, cool.
Citrus doesn't need that treatment, for instance. It's so acidic and the flavor's so delicate. Blueberry actually benefits from a longer, hotter cook. You get more color extraction, and you actually get a little bit more of that like blueberry compote flavor. I mean, you guys have had blueberries before, right? They don't taste like much. They're tart and sweet. So when you ferment them and you remove the sweet, there's really not much flavor left. But if you give them a good cook, you can really stick some of that flavor, that blueberry flavor around that people expect.
So I heard a trick that to get blueberry flavor, you should actually use blackberries.
Yeah,
So
I
you
heard
don't
the
do
same
that.
thing about peach with apricot.
Oh, okay. I'm fascinated to hear how you learned all this stuff, like this trick about blueberries and sort of like the whole strawberry seed. This is just years of experimentation, or how do you know to do this?
Yeah, it is. It's a combination of years of experimentation and cooking. So our first head brewer, Josh Elliott, it was just him and I for the first, I don't know, 3 years or so in the brewery, and we had a lot of time to just kind of mull these questions over to ourselves and think about cooking and think about fruit and flavor and how to bring these things out. And a lot of it's just yeah, trial and error and trying to pull in techniques from the culinary world and scale them up.
Em, do you have any questions?
I want to know what your favorite fruit is, because you have one. I know you do. Everyone has a favorite fruit. Mine's raspberry, just so you know.
Oh, raspberry is a good choice.
With or without seeds, Em?
With 100% with seeds.
Okay, sorry.
Because when we're talking like jam, you want raspberries
Oh,
with
yeah.
you got to have the seeds. Unseeded raspberry jam is an abomination.
It really is.
And then raspberry in beer is just delightful. I really love. Yeah, I love that flavor. I didn't know that. I feel like you have to have a favorite, or because you brew with fruit all the time, is that being like, who's your favorite child? You know, is it like that kind of situation?
My absolute favorite is probably black raspberry. The color, the flavor intensity, the importance locally here in Cincinnati. It's just such a wonderful fruit. It's just so damn expensive. Pawpaw's probably number 2 for similar reasons.
Pawpaws are a huge pain in the ass. And I let your laughter that reinforces my statement. They are, for people who don't know, it's like thin skin and then the inside is slippery and weird and smells like pancakes, and then they have big flat seeds and they are delicious and tropical and wonderful, but man, so when you get your pawpaws, do you get them with the seeds out and pureed and all that stuff, or are you cutting them up? Because they are tricky bastards.
Yeah. There's a local semi-local farm here in Ohio called Integration Acres that sells pawpaw puree, but it often goes quick shortly after harvest season. So you got to be on it if you want any of his puree that's de-skinned and de-seeded. So we use some of that, and then we also, if we're buying a whole pawpaw from a local foraging network that we have or our own foraged, what we found is that it's just not worth the effort to try to take all that other stuff off. So we usually just smush them with our hands and then toss in all the seeds and skins together.
Oh, how does that change the flavor versus just using the for lack of a better word, the mush?
I like that. The skins have a little bit of bitterness to them and an astringency that you need to account for in your recipe. So whether that's just dialing back the acidity a little bit or even just cutting your hops to near non-use, that's how we account for that.
You mentioned, Bret, that with your beers, you really want to showcase the flavor of the fruit. Is there a fruit that you've been unsuccessful, like you've tried 50 times and you just cannot get a beer that tastes like this fruit?
That is a great question, because we do have that. It's coconut. I can't get coconut to work. The toasted coconut puree is great, but you have to use so much of it that it's cost prohibitive for us to do anything with it. And the coconut purees are just so laden with fat that it's just you can't. And since we have a pretty strong more guiding value of just using fruit, no extracts or flavorings or anything like that, that it just I can't get coconut. I can't make it work. So if you know how, or if anybody knows how, I would love to know the secret to coconut. But that's our white whale.
I know how. You just use flavoring.
No. Yeah, that's never, because I don't think I've ever had like a coconut sour before. I've had like smoothie sours where it's like kind of a contributing flavor, but it's mostly I've had imperial stouts with coconut in it where they're greasy.
Yes, they are slick.
Yeah, it's slick, and you're like, I love coconut in beers. I think it's actually one of my favorite flavors, especially with darker beers. But man, that slickness is, I can imagine with like, oh yeah, that's gotta be. I want to help you in this regard. I don't know how, but I will.
Please
what is the
please
most
do.
What is the most exotic fruit that you've brewed with?
Oh, we've used lychee or lychee before,
Oh,
which,
okay.
is fairly exotic. We've used mangosteen, which was illegal in
Oh,
the
yeah.
US until whatever, 2012. Um, we've used yellow mambin, aka hog plum, which comes from Brazil. That's probably my favorite and most unheard of fruit that we've brewed at scale before is the yellow mambin. It's this
Okay.
yellow little plum looking thing that grows on 100-foot tall trees in the northeast corner of the Brazilian rainforest. And it's just the most like tropical candy like flavor that works and carries through fermentation. It is a delight and something that is really unique.
Right, you need to go to Brazil because their sour beers are really good, and their fruits, all the fruits that you get to have are they're like cashew. They're like cashew Catherine
Oh yeah.
sours are really, really good. I judged in the Brazil Beer Cup. I judged the medal round for Catarina sours that were Brazil bait, like
Mhm.
using Brazil fruits, and because they wanted non Brazilians to judge it. And so it was myself, a guy from Uruguay, someone from Panama, and then a German judge. And yeah, we got to try the fruits before we had the beers. And it
Ah.
was really fascinating. There was fruits that it looked like a kiwi, but tasted like a lime.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, I don't remember what it was, but I feel like you should, and the team should go down
Yeah.
to Brazil
They
and
don't have the budget for it, Em. He just
no,
said
but I
so.
mean, you could go on vacation or something, or go down and judge a competition, or maybe do a collaboration where it would be, once you get to Brazil, the exchange rate's quite favorable for Americans. And it's a wonderful country. So I feel like for all I could think of when you were talking about fruits was the fruit beers I had
Mhm.
in Brazil, and how feels like you would be very comfortable down there.
I have a challenge for you, Brett, as well, sort of building on what Em said. I would like you to make a delicious, I want to emphasize that it has to be delicious, durian beer.
Oh man.
Yeah. See? Okay.
We
Go ahead.
we had an intern in 2017 who is now married to a woman from China, and he for his capstone project had us make a durian beer.
Oh,
And it was
awful.
it was foul.
My last question, and then I'll turn it to Em if she has any more questions. But my last question, you briefly mentioned hops. How do hops factor into your recipe design?
That's the best part. They don't.
Okay.
The money you would have spent on hops goes to fruit.
But
Exactly.
like you don't use aged hops or anything like that.
No, I buy actually isomerized extract because
Oh, okay.
I don't even want to put anything in the boil kettle because it's just going to hurt yields. And we take it to about 8 to 10 IBUs right before centrifuging, and that's it. I find that hop flavor generally, like it just gets in the way, and the bitterness that hops have is different than the tannic bitterness that fruit has, and I find that it's far more better to balance the sweet and the sour with tannin based bitterness than it is with hop based bitterness.
And so you're really just doing IBUs for microbial
Yep.
control. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
That
was my last question. Go
My
ahead.
last question is, do you know how many total like different fruits you've used in the entire like time that the brewery's been around? Off the top of your head, I guess.
I keep a spreadsheet that's a little out to date of the total amount of fruit pounds we've used in our lifetime, and I want to say that it's about right around 50 to 60 columns deep on different fruits we've used.
Oh my
wow.
goodness. That's so cool. I don't know any other brewery that does stuff like this. Do you, Don?
No,
Yeah.
no, this is pretty cool.
It's
Brett, can you share your social media handles so that people can find out everything that you're doing and when your next release of the durian beer will be?
Yeah. Yeah. I deleted my personal social media about 6 months ago, but you can find Urban Artifact on basically anything, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, I think even. So just search Urban Artifact and you can find what we're doing, when we're doing it, and where to get us.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you, Bret.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking all things fruit. This has been very fascinating, and
You
it's
blew my
really
mind
yeah.
multiple times.
Once if you blow Don's mind, then it's successful. So kudos to you. So thank you so much for your time. This has been awesome.
Well, thank you both. It was a pleasure chatting with you guys, and let me know if there's anything I can ever do for you in the future.
Of course,
Cheers.
of course. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Estrella Galicia is an independent family-owned brewery in Northwest Spain, founded in 1906. Estrella Galicia Cerveza Especial is a world-class lager brewed using the finest Spanish malts, locally cultivated Galician hops, and the best brewing practices made out of the state-of-the-art facility in A Coruña. Recognized around the world for quality and exceptional character, Estrella Galicia is a beer like no other. To learn more about Estrella Galicia, follow them at Estrella Galicia USA on Instagram.
All About Beer is back, and we're asking for your support to help provide the independent beer media this rich and colorful industry deserves. Visit our website, allaboutbeer.com, where we're frequently posting new content. And please consider throwing us a few bucks at patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We have low-cost memberships for individuals and small and large companies alike. Every dollar goes to help produce new articles and podcasts.
Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.
5 years ago, Stephen Smith Hay started Vault City Brewing after experimenting with heavily fruited, mixed fermentation sour beers and spotting a niche with huge potential in an otherwise crowded market. As a keen homebrewer, Stephen saw the accessibility of Vault City's signature style as an opportunity to reach avid craft beer fans and non-beer drinkers alike. He has since seen the company grow from just 2 full-time employees to nearly 30 across Vault City's brewery and its 2 bars. Stephen's past life as an IT consultant seems a world away in 2023, which makes for a good story about boring day jobs and exciting hobby-turned-career opportunities that may have otherwise remained a daydream. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you very much, Don. It's great of you to have me. Shame I couldn't make it across to Canada, but
Or us to Scotland.
I know.
Well,
I would always go back to Scotland.
Yeah, I love it too.
would. That is a wonderful place.
You're lucky to live there, Steve.
Yes, you are.
well, you're welcome anytime, and we can spend longer than an hour in the bar next time.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about Vault City and what you mean by modern sour beer.
Sure. So Vault City started a little bit by accident. I follow the sort of similar story as many breweries, as a bit of an obsessed or a very obsessed home brewer who started making too much beer for friends and family to drink, and being Scottish, whiskey's in our blood, so we're used to drinking a lot, and eventually was dumping batches because I wanted to make a next batch. Drove the sort of decision to go to start to sell beer commercially, which started from my kitchen, eventually moved to a cuckoo brewing situation, and then we've now found our home in Portobello, a wee seaside town just outside of Edinburgh. We decided to specialize in what was sour beer at the time. We hadn't coined the modern sour beer term just yet at that point. Mainly down to the fact that we felt that in the UK that style of sour beer wasn't really represented, or the sour beers that I wanted to drink weren't represented in any great fashion. So we've obviously got great access to all of your Belgian products, German beer, but the sort of heavily fruited, really wacky out there American stuff that I was, brewing at home and trying to emulate as a home brewer, you just didn't get it commercially. So started making it at home, and then decided to have a go at making it on a bigger scale.
Awesome. So I love your beer. I personally have had a number of them. I think a lot of people think of fruited beers as necessarily sour and very dry, but yours are different. So can you kind of describe the ethos of Vault City beer?
Of course. Yeah, of course. So approachability is front and center for us in every beer. So we want to make sure that our beers showcase the exceptional ingredients that we work with. We're blessed in Scotland to have access to amazing soft fruits. A lot of our fruit comes from sort of 10 miles up the road. It's a really nice sort of access to really, really fresh fruit. A lot of sours can be sort of bracingly tart, really acidic, enamel stripping. What we wanted to do was to almost soften that a little bit by balancing out with quite a sort of soft body. Make sure it's got really great mouthfeel, make sure that we're adding sort of layers of creaminess to the beer, so that you don't have one sip and Joe average beer drinker who's maybe starting their craft beer journey immediately goes, oh, okay, so I don't like sours. Saying you don't like sours is the same as saying you don't like an IPA after trying a triple IPA that's been oxidized in the can for 6 months in the boot of your car. So it was all about trying to make sure that we are showcasing the greatest ingredients that we can and making sure that it's got a really good level of approachability whilst still maintaining complexity.
And so one of the things that you told me when we met that kind of blew me away is how much residual sugar you have in your beers and like your finishing gravity.
Yeah, I think that was just at the time of when we released Center Skies, which was a collaboration with our good friends at Neon Raptor. The finishing gravity of that was 1095.
Yeah.
So if you ferment a beer at 1095 and go all the way down to close to zero, you're getting a big beer. We finished at 1095.
Yeah.
So we finished at 1095, started somewhere close to 1200. It was a really, really big beer and not one I'm keen to make again. It just caused dispense issues upon dispense issues, but it was a really fun, interesting project to tick off. Tasted great. It had a peanut butter, strawberry. It was just it was a crazy beer.
It caused dispense issues because of the fruit or what reason?
Just the viscosity of it. It was just so thick, and not thick in a way that like fruit adds thickness. Like, because you add fruit to beer, and although it is like smoothie thick, there's a difference between smoothie thick and almost like treacle thick. It was like a syrup. It was pushing. Yeah, you're trying to push honey up a line. It was. I talked a lot about balance and approachability. That was not balanced. And if you just gave that someone blind, they'd ask you what the hell it was. So that's one of the more out there ones.
Em, I've been dominating the questions as usual. So
that's fine. No, because you're such a nerd. It's totally fine. This is your wheelhouse, man. I'm on your website right now, actually, because I have never had any of your beers. I unfortunately didn't drink them when I was in Scotland visiting, but it looks like you brew a lot with like pastry. So I see donuts, I see marshmallow, I see cheesecake. How does that work with fruit? Like, and how do you use those ingredients?
So with fruit, we follow a fairly standard pattern of how we make beer. So the base beer itself, fermented by our house culture. We then add fruit in as a secondary, and then usually the other ingredients come in as tertiary. The sort of cheesecake and the peanut butter, all these things on the homebrew scale, it's fine to use the actual physical ingredients. One thing that we're quite open about, and is maybe a kind of a badly kept secret in the beer industry, is that flavorings are a reality of trying to get to these flavor profiles. So yeah, for things like cheesecake, it is a cheesecake natural flavoring that we put in our beer. It's funny when we talk to other brewers about it, and they're asking, "How did you get this?" And it's like, "Oh, we use this product from that place." And they're like, "All right, well, we use flavorings too." It's like, "Yeah, we know. You don't actually put double peanut butter, Hershey's chocolate, like that doesn't actually go in the beer. We know that. You make 5,000 liters of the stuff. It's not possible." So yeah, it's But I mean, it's all about making sure you get the absolute quality ingredients that, it does what it says it does. We balance it out with other projects that we do. So sometimes we do farm to fermenter beers where we go up to the farm, sort of, 10 miles north, and we get fruit picked, fruit processed, and into the beer within a couple of hours from it actually leaving the field. So we do like to remain authentic here and there, but there is nothing authentic about a cheesecake beer. Let's be honest.
That's fine. That's fine.
Really, you should be not only using real cheesecake, but you should be baking that cheesecake yourself.
No.
100%. We've done stuff in the past where it is adding silly amounts of stuff to beers, and it does get a crazy. But I mean, the majority of pastry products, like a cheesecake, like the majority of what you get in a cheesecake, I mean, number one, it's cream cheese, and nobody really wants that in their beer. But a lot of things like maple syrup, it ferments out to nothing. There's so much sugar in maple syrup that the actual maple flavor is actually quite soft once you've really sort of vigorously fermented away those simple sugars. So it's a bit tough to get right.
How much fruit do you use in a typical beer? Because I really get the sense that it's a lot.
Yeah, so we've just done it's our 5th birthday this month. So we've got 5 beers coming out, all of which are pretty crazy. The craziest of the lot, I think, is the 999 grams a litre, which we've only done 3 of, and that is the legal maximum of fruit that you can use in a beer. And it's come out like an absolute milkshake. You're better off throwing out the glass it was poured into rather than trying to clean it.
999 grams per liter? Is that what you said?
So
oh my God.
Yeah, 999. So it's just insane amounts of fruit. It's not something that we make a habit of brewing. It's incredibly expensive to make. The price point we have to keep down at an acceptable level. Nobody wants to pay sort of £25 a can for a can of beer if we sort of went with margins that our accountant would be happy with. So we do sell it at a bit of a loss, but it's those kind of crazy beers that we still want to make. Whilst we've got our core range, so our core range beers might be down somewhere maybe towards 150 grams a litre, which is still a lot of fruit. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, you say down to, but it's still a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we're maybe a little bit further behind in the craft beer journey over in the UK compared to Canada, US, and all that. So we've been one of the first people to have sour beers on the shelf in supermarkets in the UK. And even then, it's still like 150 grams a litre of mango in our flagship beer, triple fruited mango. So it's a lot of fruit. We have a very big fruit bill every month.
You mentioned you're getting fruit from 10 miles up the road. What kind of things are grown up there? Like, what are you getting? Because the climate of Scotland, I don't immediately think fresh fruit in Scotland, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, the mangoes aren't from here. No.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
they come from a little bit further afield. But you've got amazing soft fruit. There are raspberries, strawberries. Like they taste amazing. You got some more sort of obscure fruits like your tayberries, your honeyberries. We've got really lovely gooseberries. A lot of soft fruit is produced in Scotland.
Oh, I did not know that.
Neither did I. A honeyberry, is that also called a cloudberry?
I think it is. I think you're right. It's a kind of it's a cousin of the blueberry, and it looks slightly phallic.
It does. I am Googling it right now, and this is it's like a long blueberry. That's what it looks like.
Oh.
Yeah, we unfortunately put a picture of one out on our Instagram and encouraged our fans to name the beer that we're going to use this in, and I don't think I can share 90% of the suggestions.
I see.
Nor would you want to drink it if it was called that, but anyway.
Okay.
You mentioned briefly a house culture. Can you describe a bit of that? And do you think it is special in terms of working with fruit as opposed to, non-fruited beers?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of our beers are mixed fermentation, so we don't kettle sour. It's all fermented using our house culture, which is 2 strains of Saccharomyces and 5 strains of Lactobacillus.
Oh,
It was originally traded in the post with a home brewer from Lithuania.
oh,
It's a mixture of wild yeast, farmhouse yeast. It's a real sort of melting pot of different bits and pieces. So it all gets fermented as one. So a co-pitch of lacto and sac. We keep it all on site, so it's all sort of growing up, almost like a Solera in a propagation tank. And it just gives incredible, it just throws out loads of beautiful kind of peachy, apricot, pear. We've never actually done a beer which is just our straight base beer before, but if you're ever lucky enough to come to the brewery and try some of it, it's like, even, we ferment hot, we ferment sort of close to 40 degrees Celsius.
oh, wow.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
that's Kvikot. That's
Yeah. So similar families, just not the right region. It's it's a really special house culture, and something that we're, I think that is just the secret sauce for Vault City, is that fermentation. And
oh, really?
because we only really use that house culture, a lot of breweries would shy away from, well, they wouldn't want it anywhere near their brew house. Basically, it's wild yeast. But because we're using only that for 99% of the beers, we don't have infection worries. So that's how we're able to sort of go down this road of, not kettle souring and doing things with a co-pitch fermentation. It's funny, whenever we do like an imperial stout and we're bringing, like a standard Cali ale yeast into the brew house, we actually treat it like, as bad as having like a Brettanomyces infection in the brewery, because we don't want this commercially pitched yeast to infect the rest of our wild culture. It's backwards thinking.
Wait, how the heck did you connect with a home brewer in Lithuania? Like, how did that even happen? And how did you discover like that's the flavor you wanted to use? That's bonkers to me.
It is.
So
I'm very cool.
Yeah, no, it was right back at the start of when Vault City started. It was just from homebrewing days. So that was, going through the internet and being on homebrewer sites, and came up with wanted to search out this particular yeast, and we're glad we did.
You mentioned you got your start in home brewing. You mentioned that you ferment at 40 degrees, which still blows my mind.
That's like, yeah. What is it for our Fahrenheit friends? Hold on, I just didn't know.
That is
You are
95.
So you're like Saison DuPont level, essentially.
It's-
Yeah, 104.
Oh,
Done.
104.
104. That's a bad fever.
It's a very hot bag.
That's
And you
crazy.
also told me that you ferment under pressure. So how
Yeah.
did you figure out to do this? How did you know it would make better beer or accomplish the mouthfeel and the flavor that you were talking about earlier? Like, how does this happen? I guess.
I'd love to tell you it was some scientific process, but the thought process initially was, I walk into the brewery in the morning and it smells really good, but I don't want my brewery to smell good. I want my beer to smell good. Every single bit of aroma that's gotten out of that fermentation vessel is no longer in the beer, and the consumer's not getting it. So it was very much just we do our primary fermentation with the house culture. That then goes to about sort of 5 points away from terminal, and then we add the fruit in on secondary. So we do the first fermentation open, and then once we add the fruit, we then close it in for a secondary fermentation under pressure. It goes up to about 2 bar, which it's hard to keep yeast happy at that, because you've got a couple of factors there where there's now alcohol in the environment, there's acidity, there's pressure. Like, basically, if you wanted to kill your yeast, you follow all these steps. So it sometimes can be a little bit tough to get the beer to go all the way, but we've worked with this house culture for long enough now to understand it as much as we can. But yeah, secondary is always under pressure, and sort of 2 things sort of came out immediately. The first was the aroma just popped. Like, opening up that can of beer was like, smelling the fermenter when it was going full whack at secondary fermentation. So that was like sort of ticking the box number 1. But the the interesting one I found was the kind of quality and formation of the head and the carbonation itself just seemed to be a lot smoother, a lot gentler. Like rather than injecting CO2 in at the end to reach your desired carbonation levels, which we do sometimes need to do to top it up, naturally carbonating did seem to add an extra element of smoothness to the beer, which I have never once looked into. I ticked the box and went, "That's better. I wonder why that is," and then you move on with your day. So yeah, it seems to be seems to add a creaminess.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of how many different fruits you've worked with?
That's a good question. I've not asked that before. I'd like to say maybe about 50.
Oof.
Something about that. We've really gone for some like obscure fruits and stuff that people haven't heard of, and really sort of searching for stuff that's new and interesting. I think the combinations of fruit is the real interesting stuff. Like, mango by itself is amazing. Passion fruit by itself is amazing, but you combine those two, and it's just like the perfect sour beer for me is mango and passion fruit. I can drink that all day long. But we've used a lot of fruit in our time.
Is the mango passion fruit your favorite combo? Like, is that the favorite fruit you brew with, or is there something else that you got that you brew with that you're like, oh yeah?
I mean, passion fruit by itself is absolutely my favorite.
It's so good. Yeah,
it's beautiful. It's a shame how expensive it's gotten recently, but it's just we're relying on good crops every year, and if there's a bad crop, then the fruit's more expensive, which is becoming more and more of a problem, obviously. I like coconut. A lot of people hate coconut, but mango, passion fruit, coconut, you've got a sort of like pina colada thing going. It's beautiful.
Yeah, you're on the beach.
Question: how do you use coconut in your sours?
Yeah, sure. So we love using coconut. I've tried various things. The first thing we did was coconut cream. I added like 20 liters to maybe 2,000 liters of beer. Couldn't taste the coconut. Added more, added more, added more. And then we ended up getting to 200 kilograms of coconut cream in 2,000 liters of beer. And eventually there was a lot of coconut in the beer. But what had happened was the coconut cream itself didn't quite mix with the beer. Bear in mind, like, I've not got a brewing background. I'm just a jumped up home brewer. So like a lot of brewers will probably listen to this and just like cringe at those numbers. But eventually it mixed in the tank. But then when we bottled it, the coconut cream separated and formed a plug at the top of the bottle. Oh. So we had like 2,000 liters of this like really delicious, it was a stout, really delicious stout that we really wanted people to try. So we had to release a disclaimer or a warning with the beer to say that you had to shake it up before pouring. And it wasn't like, invert this beer to get it, to get like a smoothie sour going. It was like, vigorously shake this beer for a minute and then leave it for 2 minutes and then carefully open it. That did taste like coconut, but it didn't quite get the, we didn't want to be making people, give them tennis elbow from shaking their beer up. So we've done various things. We've now settled on toasted coconut flakes. We've got a new bar that opened up last year just down the road from the brewery. We've got a big smoker in there, so big fan of smoked meats, and our commercial smoker there sometimes gets loaded up with coconut flakes, and we toast the flakes and then walk them up the road and stick them in the beer. That can, Maplewood smoked coconut flakes in a beer. That's where it's at.
Damn, nice.
Steve, you mentioned that passion fruit is probably your favorite fruit to use in beer. And as Em mentioned, I'm uber nerdy. So I wanted to ask if you've ever thought of making the same beer, but with different varieties of passion fruit, and then seeing if you could actually taste the different types of passion fruit in a beer.
Yeah, for sure. We've done it with mango. So our sort of biggest selling beer is our triple fruit mango. We tried out 3 different varieties of mango and a sort of back to back, and we settled on Alfonso mango, which has got a really cool name to boot. So yeah, we've done stuff like that in the past. I'd like to do it with more things. Like, there's loads of varieties of strawberries. We know farmers who are growing certain varietals that we want to try out. it's just it's one of these things that we're now at the scale without a pilot kit where in order to do a back-to-back test, we're having to brew like 4,000 liters. So it becomes a little bit of an expensive test. We currently operate out of a 5,000 square foot warehouse, which is absolutely tiny for our needs now. So the homebrew kit got taken out and more tanks got put in. So, but yeah, no, it's interesting to see what different varieties of fruit can add to the party, and even like, you know, the fruit coming in at different times of harvest, and early season raspberries and late season raspberries. The differences that you see there are pretty stark. So it's challenging to work with when we're trying to create a product that's consistent across the year. But
Right.
if we get a lot of rain towards the end of season, then it'll change the berry. So yeah, it's interesting.
That is interesting. I love this stuff. When we chatted a couple of years ago, you were looking to buy a centrifuge, but you told me it was not a normal beer centrifuge. It was a special kind of French centrifuge. And then the one thing that kind of blew my mind at the time was you told me how expensive it was going to be, but your gains from using it were going to be so great that it was going to pay itself in some ridiculous short amount of time. Could you tell me about that again?
Well, do you want the horror story?
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Guess when that centrifuge is being commissioned, and you can tell by the way I said that is when it is going to be commissioned.
Later today, tomorrow.
It's next week.
Okay.
So been a bit of a process with that, and
Okay.
that is unfortunately part and parcel of sort of being of having equipment that isn't quite you know, it doesn't appear in breweries of our size. It's
Right.
in the big boy breweries, but you know, nobody below the size of like your big AB InBev style breweries have these. I think Treehouse and Trillium might have one in the States, but we were the first to order one in the UK.
Okay.
But it's a decanter centrifuge. So the typical uses for decanter centrifuges are well, when I was talking to the German team that were designing it, trying to explain why it wasn't a disc stack centrifuge, which is used for, you know, polishing and removing of small hop matter from beer, so something most sizable breweries would have.
Right.
Not quite that. I want to remove a lot of solid matter. Like I want to remove all this fruit pulp, but keep the juice. And the guy from Germany says, we have this machine, but we use it for Z baby food. I was like, yes, baby food. That's what we make. Like, think of baby food. Like, you know, we want to make baby food with alcohol in it. That's the consistency. So it's a decanter centrifuge, ran us about £250,000. The losses that we've seen in beers, like we're typically struggling to get above 80% yield on a beer. So losing 20% of each tank to, you know, just fruit junk, just loads of, not like yeast rubbish that you don't want right at the bottom of the tank, but the fruit puree, like the fruit matter, the fibrous stuff, like that's sat in the tank, and you know, it tastes nice as a smoothie, but if you're trying to make a non-smoothie beer, you don't want to put that in a can. So that processes that and should take our losses from 20% down to below 5%.
Okay.
So it's a substantial increase or a substantial decrease, and you know, it'll allow us to sort of shoulder some of the other price increases that we've seen come our way, and not have to increase prices due to the price of fruit going up and grain and electricity and all the stuff that everyone's very well aware of.
Right. The issue has become more acute with price increases, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you know, fruit's a big one, and you know, Brexit hasn't helped us an awful lot, I'll tell you that. So yeah, getting stuff into the country can be a bit of a challenge.
And so I think you told me, even though it's £250,000, you will pay off that centrifuge through recovered beer in like 6 months.
Yeah, it's a really quick payback
Yeah.
period. Just because we're currently throwing away, if we're making 30 batches of beer in a month and we're throwing away 15% of that, then the maths is quite quick. You're getting product for free essentially. So
Yeah.
and it also improves the quality of it as well. If you think about the really sort of like the stuff that's at the bottom of the fermenter, the stuff that's like the really heavy fruit matter, like that's got a lot of flavor into it. So if you process that, you're getting a really sort of concentrated fruit flavor in there. So the flavor in theory should improve. We're still yet to trial it out, but yeah, flavor. The beers are still going to be as high quality as they are. They should be better.
Yeah. Awesome.
Very
I
cool.
think Em and I were gonna book flights.
Hey, you don't
You're more
have
than
to.
welcome.
Actually, we were thinking about going. My husband and I are thinking about going to Scotland next year we have a very good friend in Glasgow, so we were going to go visit. And I, twist my arm to go to Scotland. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful country. So I
Yeah,
did.
we've got
Yes.
a lot of different things to experience, and it's once you go north, going out for 3 days next month, just taking the motorbike. Me and my wife are going to go out and do a bit of island hopping. It's amazing to be able to do 3 nights away and see so much of a country. It's great. The weather's rubbish a lot of the time, but that's what it
A
is.
lot of rainbows. That was
That's true.
my family vacation's motto after we went was the Sauter family vacation, another fucking rainbow. Because it was just like every corner. I was like, oh, another fucking rainbow. And it was gorgeous, it was amazing.
And
It's
if you
funny
go
that
to Spelt City, you can taste the rainbow. You can drink the rainbow.
There we go.
That's a marketing degree right there.
Yep.
It's funny. Do you remember the video that came out a while ago? It was one of the first like sort of like viral videos. It was the double rainbow guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone, yeah.
I remember watching that, being younger, being like, see a double rainbow every month. What's this?
Yeah. Is he laughing at it because it's not a triple rainbow? Like I don't get what.
We
Yeah.
don't really have it's not,
In the
yeah.
video.
It was just a normal like Tuesday to see like 50 rainbows when we were there in October of 2019. And yeah, it was just like rainbow after rainbow after rainbow. We don't, unless you live in like Hawaii or other rainy, maybe Alaska if it's sunnier, like and rainy during the rain. Like we don't, I don't see a rainbow every day here in New England.
Send you photos. I'm looking for one now, but we're all out.
Oh, okay.
I am out of questions. Do you have any more questions?
I am also out of questions, but I am wanting to, Don, we're going to Scotland to try these beers.
Yeah, that sounds good. You don't have to twist my arm.
No, yeah.
Steve, can you please tell us your social media handles, etc., where people can follow what you're doing, see these amazing beers, and then be envious that they, can't taste them because they live in America or Canada?
Yeah, sure. We're all over Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. What's the new one called?
Threads.
That's the one. I downloaded it, looked at it, and went, no, I actually don't like social media. I forgot about that. We're all over everything as Vault City Brewing, at Vault City Brewing. So give us a follow, and yeah, like we'll our diaries are packing up with loads of international festivals, so it'd be great to get across, get across to Canada, get across the US, and the thing is, you guys make such good sour beer over there that we'd just be one of many. So yeah, it's great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Take care, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
So, Em, what's the favorite thing you learned about fruit in beer?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. Like, it's pretty crazy how much fruit you really need to use.
Yes.
And then I also really enjoyed where the sourcing was, from 10 miles up the road in your backyard to what? Turkey and all over the world with Urban Artifact. Like it's very unique how breweries take different approaches to sourcing products to make their beers.
It's kind of a chef's approach, I guess, because if you talk to chefs, they'll tell you that their hardest job is sourcing ingredients. If you have great ingredients, you make great food. So I guess the same applies to beer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also made me very thirsty, and it made me want to try some fruit beers, especially some really unique fruit beers, especially the two people we talked to are making some beers that sound wonderful and
Yeah.
unique and very 2023.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very cool stuff.
Love it. Love it. Well, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And if you're feeling generous, please visit patreon.com/allaboutbeer to support this show and others. If you have questions for the experts, please email us at podcast@allaboutbeer.com. That's also the email for feedback, suggestions, if you have a show idea, or to inquire about supporting this show through advertising. Speaking of advertising, here's a word from our sponsors.
Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.
All About Beer is back, and we're asking for your support to help provide the independent beer media this rich and colorful industry deserves. Visit our website, allaboutbeer.com, where we're frequently posting new content. And please consider throwing us a few bucks at patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We have low-cost memberships for individuals and small and large companies alike. Every dollar goes to help produce new articles and podcasts.
Estrella Galicia is an independent family-owned brewery in Northwest Spain, founded in 1906. Estrella Galicia Cerveza Especial is a world-class lager brewed using the finest Spanish malts, locally cultivated Galician hops, and the best brewing practices made out of the state-of-the-art facility in A Coruña. Recognized around the world for quality and exceptional character, Estrella Galicia is a beer like no other. To learn more about Estrella Galicia, follow them at Estrella Galicia USA on Instagram.
You know how at the end we always ask people to review the podcast?
Of course.
I'm not going to do that this week.
Wait, what?
No, this week I'm going to ask our listeners to forward this podcast to just one person.
Only one?
Only one. And when they do it, please tag us on social media so we can personally thank them for listening to the show, and thank you for listening to the show. And speaking of social media, how can people find you?
I am at Pints and Panels across all social media, and my website is pintsandpanels.com. How about you, Don?
I am at The Dawn of Beer on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, and people can drop me an email at dawn@thedawnofbeer.com. This show is produced by All About Beer. Visit allaboutbeer.com for articles, notes on this show and others, and to connect via the newsletter and social media. Cheers.
Cheers.
Keep drinking fruity.